here, and then several of you that I got to meet at the summit last year. So it's great to see all of you. Just to give a visual description of myself for those that need it, I'm a white female. I have brown hair, and I am wearing a beige colored sweater because it is cold here in Florida today, and I am so excited for the winter that's coming on. So awesome. Andrea, if you could pull up the slides, that would be great.
You got it. Okay. Let me go to the next one. 1 second. There we go.
Wonderful. So I'm going to be talking about opportunities for aspiring youth leaders in Florida today. I'm going to be going over a lot of information over the next 45 minutes or so. And so we are recording this. We are also going to send out a guidebook that we have created at the end of the webinar. So please don't feel like you have to take down all of this information at one time. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring if anybody that's not accessible for them. Also, feel free to raise your hand. We will do questions at the end, but if there's something pressing that you have an immediate question for, feel free to throw it in the chat or raise your hand, and we will be monitoring. Okay, next slide. A little bit about me. Andrea gave a really good introduction, but I just wanted to sort of briefly tell you, there we go, about how I started as an aspiring youth leader. So as a youth with a disability, I had very little involvement in the disability community. I did not know very many other people with disabilities, and it wasn't really until I joined adaptive sports, and then, as I'll talk about in a few slides, joined the Youth Leadership Forum here in Florida, that's really what got me connected to the disability community. And once I got connected and took that first step and that leap of faith, that sort of forged my path forward for the future. It helped me want to be a better advocate for other people. It helped me want to know that I wanted to be a social worker to help make change in the world for youth with disabilities. And none of that would have happened if I had never been involved as a young leader. And so involvement as a youth helped me show me that I had a voice, number one, because as a person, especially a young person with a disability, you often feel like your voice doesn't matter. You know, you're told what you can't do, or you're told what your limitations are, and it's hard for you to really believe that you have a place at the table. And so being able to get involved as a youth helped me find my voice and believe that I also too could have a seat at that table. Next slide. So where have I been involved? I'm just going to kind of take you on a roadmap journey of how I started and where I am now as an adult. As I mentioned, I started at the Florida Youth Leadership Forum, and we're going to talk about all these opportunities today. And so I met one of my closest friends, Carly Fahey, who was also at the Youth Leadership Forum, and she told me about the Family Cafe, which I had never heard about. And again, we'll talk about all that. But being able to network at a conference for families with disabilities was something that me and my family had never been exposed to before. And as I continued to just put myself out there, I was able to start doing speaking engagements and eventually connected with the Governor's Commission on Jobs for Floridians with Disabilities. And I was the first youth to ever be appointed by Governor Rick Scott to have a seat on that committee to be able to give voice to issues around transition and employment for youth with disabilities. That then led to a seat on the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council. And through that Florida Developmental Disabilities Council, I learned about a self-advocacy network that we'll talk about that I never knew existed, to be able to connect with other adults and young adults with disabilities and be able to just share our day-to-day struggles and want to make a change was really empowering for me to find. And then most recently, I was appointed to the Alliance for Assistive Services and Technology, also known as FAST. And so being able to help spread awareness about assistive technology for people with disabilities in Florida, and realizing how many youth and how many families do not even know what assistive technology is and what those services are. So that is sort of the journey that I have been on over time. Next slide. Why is it important to be an aspiring youth leader? You might be on here, and I do see a couple of, younger folks on here that I know, and you might just wonder, like, hey, just like me when I was a young person, I don't know if I have a voice. I've been told what I can't do my whole life. And so why should I be involved? Why should I be an aspiring youth leader? It promotes self-determination, and you have the ability to help make and influence decisions when you're involved on some of these councils, on some of these leadership opportunities. You get to actually use your self-determination to help influence those major decisions. It also gives you an opportunity for empowerment. So believing that you have a voice and that your voice is important. It promotes independence. So maybe you're on a board and you're away from your parent or guardian on some of these meetings. Again, that empowerment of I get to be able to make my own decisions or decisions that are going to help impact other young people with disabilities. And my parents aren't making or guardians are not making these decisions for me. I get to be able to have that determination, which also in turn then builds your self-advocacy skills. If I know now how to advocate for other people, I'm also advocating for the barriers that I see. And so you're just using that on a larger scale, which gives you the confidence to be able to do that for yourself in your own daily life. And then lastly, networking. We say with networking, it's all about who you know. And so being able to be a leader on some of these leadership opportunities will open doors for employment, will open doors for, if you want to do public speaking, like for me, being able to have those opportunities and meet those people to better build your network will always be helpful for your future. Next slide. So now we're going to jump in, and this is up, and Parker said it's also fun. Absolutely. Yes, how did I miss that? I always forget, it's not all work, it can be play too. So thank you, Parker, for reminding me of that. So we're going to jump into some of the opportunities that are available for youth to get involved with. And again, this is probably an exhaustive list. I hope it's not too overwhelming. Feel free to ask questions, and you will get all of this information afterwards. So this one is near and dear to my heart. I know Linda Starnes is on here, and both of her kids, Mac and Emily, have been through the Youth Leadership Forum as well. I see Ava, who actually just attended the Youth Leadership Forum this year, is on the call. And so this program is something that completely has changed my life. And on the flip side now, as an adult, I actually get to be our program director for the Florida Youth Leadership Forum. So it's a full circle moment that I just am so grateful to be a part of. But the Youth Leadership Forum is a unique leadership training program for students ages 15 to 21. So we take anybody in that transition age, whether up until they graduate at age 22. And we do a whole bunch of activities. It's a 5-day program, and we do everything from teaching job readiness, career exploration, being able to learn how to be a leader and develop your leadership skills. What are my gifts? What are my talents? And also, as Parker says, we have fun. We get to have social activities at night, such as a dance. We do a talent show, and gives you an opportunity to build those lifelong friendships that I have found coming out of YLF. Next slide. Youth Leadership Forum brings you to Tallahassee. So we stay on Florida State University's campus. And our dates for 2024 are pretty solid. These should be the proper dates. We're just waiting on FSU to give us the go-ahead with housing, but that's July 8th through 13th. So it's a Monday through Saturday. And so over that week, as I mentioned, you're going to learn independent living skills. Getting to be on campus for that whole week teaches you how to live in a dorm, how to manage your time. We go to the dining hall and you get to be on a college campus, getting a college tour, sitting in classrooms like you would, when you are in college. You also are in a small group. So although we accept about 30 delegates per year, we give you a small group throughout the week. And this is really where you build those relationships. You come up with your own personal leadership plan, which you then take back into your community, and you set goals for how you want to use the skills that you've learned at YLF to help other people. And so you'll see in some of these pictures, you'll see actually three women in the top left at the Florida Capitol, where we do our day at the Capitol every year. The participants get to do a mock legislative session. So they sit in the representatives' chairs and they pick a bill that's important to them. And so we've done things like, should we be able to have service dogs in schools? And they get to actually debate with one another, use their voice and be able to either pass or fail one of their fellow delegates' bills. You'll see in the top right-hand photo, a group of four girls, myself is included in this picture, of a dance that we had, a theme. It was a decades theme. And so that's part of what we do every year. We do a dance with a different theme. And then in the bottom photo, you'll see a picture of one of the small groups. This was probably two groups combined because they're usually not that big, but just shows the community of people that you come to know and really get to know over those 5 days. I have included on each of these slides a QR code. So if it's easier for you to scan a code with your phone, feel free to do that, because that way it'll just link you directly to the website. And the only other thing I'll add about the Youth Leadership Forum is that because of our sponsors, we have very generous sponsors that fully fund every participant and every delegate. So there's no cost. That includes transportation to and from Tallahassee, all of the housing, the meals, etc., and any accommodations that they need to participate in the forum. So if you need a personal care attendant or a sign language interpreter, nursing staff that does medications, all of that is provided at no cost. So that is the Youth Leadership Forum. I do see a couple questions in the chat, and I might go ahead and answer those if that's okay. Angela
Thank
asks,
you.
yes, can youth with medical complexity be part of the Youth Leadership Program? Yes, Angela, they just have to qualify for vocational rehab or Division of Blind Services. That's the only criteria that we have because we are funded through Department of Ed. So as long as they meet that criteria for pre-employment transition services, then yes, we've had several students with medical complexities attend. And then the other question, I don't want to butcher it, Antoshia, for 15-year-olds, do the parents attend with them? That is a great question. So we actually do not allow parents to attend the Youth Leadership Forum, and this rubs parents sometimes. They're like, well, what do you mean? How's my kid going to go to Tallahassee and I can't go with them? I can't stay in the dorm. We're teaching independent living and we're teaching empowerment. Again, here today, we are teaching how to be an aspiring leader. And to be a leader is to be independent. And so that's why we provide those services, so that whatever accommodations they need. My parents were my caregivers until I went to the Youth Leadership Forum, and it was my first time away from home. So we do have a couple of hotels that are right down the street. We had about 5 parents stay right down the road this year, just in case anything went wrong, but we do not allow the families to stay on site or to visit throughout the week unless we need to. Linda said Mac has a trach and a feeding tube and went as a junior in high school, and we had a wonderful and safe time. We did take a mini vacation in the area the first time he went. Yeah. See, great. Families get to have a break and go on vacation. Love it. Awesome. Great questions. Okay, next slide. The next is our Florida Independent Living Council Youth Committee. So this is the organization that I work for, and we also host the Youth Leadership Forum. And so a lot of our alumni that come out of the Youth Leadership Forum then apply to become part of our youth committee. Ava's on here today. She's also just came out of the Youth Leadership Forum and is now sitting on our statewide youth committee. But it doesn't mean that you have had to go through YLF to be on the youth committee. So I just want to preface that we do have other youth that have not been a part of YLF. So what this committee does is it's just a standing committee that we have under our state plan. We operate off a state plan for independent living, and that gets written from public forums, people coming to give input, needs assessments, and things like that. And the youth have a whole goal under our state plan that's for them. and we'll talk about that in a minute. But as a committee, they make sure that those objectives and activities under our state plan are being met. Next slide. And our Florida Independent Living Council oversees the state plan that the Centers for Independent Living follows. So some of you may or may not be familiar with Centers for Independent Living, so I'm just going to give a brief overview of that. We have 15 here in the state of Florida. We've got a couple of them on the call today. And the CILs, they call them CILs. So if you hear me using CIL or CILs, that Center for Independent Living, they oversee all 67 counties between the 15 centers. And they work very closely with consumers to help empower them to make decisions in their life. So CILs are consumer controlled, meaning they push for empowerment. They're non-residential and they are all nonprofit. And they do these 5 core services that you'll see on the screen to ensure that consumers with disabilities have what they need to be independent in the community. So information and referral, a lot of individual or system advocacy work, peer support is a really big one. People with disabilities supporting other people with disabilities. 51% of all of the CIL staff or boards are actually people with disabilities themselves. So again, you see that peer support being very strong. Teaching independent living skills training, and then transition services, and that can include something from nursing home to independent home, or 2 of the people on the call today are actually youth transition coordinators. So helping young people with disabilities develop post-secondary education skills or pre-employment skills. Next slide. I included a map. I know this is very hard to read, but you'll be able to get a copy of this. And it's also on our website that is linked. So if you have any questions of ever trying to find your Center for Independent Living, feel free to shoot me an email and I can get you to your right center. But this is just a map of the state of Florida, color-coded with all of our Centers for Independent Living and what counties they serve. Next slide. Okay, so all of our Centers for Independent Living are following the state plan. They report on it every quarter. And now we have our youth committee that basically oversees the state plan and making sure that the Centers for Independent Living are ensuring that youth are being reached. And so our goal for youth in our state plan is to improve the independence and quality of life for all Floridians with disabilities. Oops. And with a big focus on improving the quality of life for youth with disabilities. Next slide. Some of the activities that our youth committee works on is making sure that all youth with disabilities have access to their Centers for Independent Living and also their transition skills, or I'm sorry, transition services. So, I mean, youth are hip and cool these days. I don't know social media that great, but they're the ones that are able to help our Centers for Independent Living give feedback of how to reach the youth in these times. And it's a really big help for our centers to be able to sit with the youth committee and for those that are on the youth committee to then in turn help them. The youth committee helps to make sure that they're helping the centers get connected with their schools in their district to do better outreach. The youth committee makes sure that there is awareness and participation from the CILs for the Youth Leadership Forum, so helping recruit us for the Youth Leadership Forum. And most importantly, which I think is my favorite part, is watching the youth committee lead public forums. And so what they do is they will get, we've done them virtually, we've done them in person, and they get in a room with other youth with disabilities, and they ask questions of what issues are important to you in Florida? You know, how can we better advocate for youth with disabilities in Florida? And to just see that peer-to-peer support is so empowering to watch. So that's probably my favorite thing that the youth committee does, and I get to kind of step out of the way and watch them take over. And it's just a really, really great thing to see. So you'll see a flyer on the screen. This is a picture of our current youth committee. We just actually expanded to 3 more members, and it just shows you what to expect. We have monthly Zoom calls for about 1 hour in length. And again, providing input on youth activities as well as youth initiatives in Florida. So we are always looking for motivated individuals, ages 15 to 30, to be able to take a leadership role in advocating for youth in Florida. Okay, next slide. Before I go on, I do see Angela put in the chat, do you provide leadership training for youth who participate on the youth committee? That's a great question, Angela. We do an orientation, and so we teach them, we actually just held an orientation last week, and we teach them how to basically be on a committee. So Robert's rules, all of our meetings follow parliamentary procedure. So how do you make a motion? How do you second a motion? How do you vote? How do you go through the process of a meeting? And being able to watch them kind of take that into action. But usually when we're recruiting for the youth committee, we look for individuals that are already showing leadership in their communities. So whether they've come through YLF or they've been part of their youth transition at their Center for Independent Living, they usually have some background of leadership training and knowledge, and we're just helping to increase that. And then kind of leads into our next national program that does a great job of providing leadership training for individuals. Okay, I am going to turn it over, and I've done a lot of talking so far, but we are super lucky. I got Abby Ritter to come on here last minute yesterday. I said, you know, I could talk about the national programs, but I don't know them as well as the person who does them on the national scale. So I'm going to turn it over to Abby, and Abby's just going to briefly talk about two of the programs on a national level that we work with very closely that help provide leadership development and training for individuals and young people with disabilities.
Hello, everyone. Sarah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to meet you all today. My name is Abby Ritter, and I'm here representing two different programs today. A brief visual description. I am a white person with short purple hair wearing a yellow shirt. I also have glasses. And so I'm here today first as the Youth Advisory Specialist for the Association of Programs for Rural Independent Living, or APRIL. So you can see Sarah's got our mission statement here, which is that APRIL is a national disability-led organization that advances people with disabilities in rural communities through advocacy, collaboration, shared experience, leadership development, education, and training. So we are a national grassroots nonprofit membership organization. Our membership is mostly consisted of centers for independent living, statewide independent living councils, and other organizations and individuals concerned with the independent living issues of people with disabilities living primarily in rural America. So we are all about independent living and about making sure that people with disabilities are living the lives that they want to lead. And we do that through a variety of different programs with a huge focus on peer support. Can you go to the next slide, please? So as the youth advisory specialist, I manage our youth programs. We have a variety of youth programs. I will start with, we love to say BYOB, bringing youth on board. APRIL was the first independent living organization to have youth seats on our board. So we have 2 youth seats on our board of directors. And these seats have full voting privileges, just like the non-youth seats. So it is not a separate chair or a separate committee or advisory. No, they are full seats on the board. And actually, you saw his picture earlier, but Noah Russell from Florida is one of our youth seats. He has one of the youth seats on the board, and we're really happy to work with him. Noah is also the chair of our youth steering committee. So our youth steering committee is a committee that is accounted for in our bylaws, and this committee helps to plan, organize, and run our annual youth conference. So APRIL hosts a national independent living conference every year. We were just in Anaheim, California last month, And one of the things we do while we're at our conference is have a whole day just for youth. They pick out a keynote speaker, they plan activities, they plan roundtable discussions for getting youth involved in talking about the issues that are facing people with disabilities throughout the US. And our youth are the people who plan that. I'm just there to kind of help guide them and occasionally point folks in maybe a different direction if needed, but really it's all on them. They're the ones who plan it, they run the day. And it's a really cool way for young people to connect with one another from all over the country. We have people, I believe, from almost every state, and we've worked previously with Puerto Rico as well. So it really creates a national network of young people. We also host what's called the Lead On Collaborative, which is our Step 2 leadership program. So we take young people who have been through things like the oh my gosh. Oh, Youth Leadership Forum. Thank you. My brain wouldn't fill in the words. Thank you for your patience. We take folks who have been through things like youth leadership forums, through programs like Empower Camp, which we're going to talk about in just a second, through other leadership opportunities, and we invite them to apply for this program. We take up to 20 people ages 15 to 30 from all over the US who are people with disabilities. And we teach them the skills that they need to continue to build their leadership skills. So, for example, one of the things that you might learn during a youth leadership forum is how to interview, or how to write a resume, or how to, start speaking with your local or national representatives. At the Lead On Collaborative, we teach them about how do you apply for a promotion? How do you negotiate your wages? How do you understand laws like the ADA or the Rehab Act to make sure that your rights aren't being violated? They meet for 6 weeks online, 2 hours a week. We bring in presenters from all over the place to talk about the skills that they have learned and can share with other young people. And then at the end of the program, all of the youth are brought on full scholarship to the April conference, where they help to present to the youth conference to demonstrate their leadership skills to the next group of young leaders. And lastly, we have our youth peer support meetings. These are monthly calls where we invite young people to just come and connect with one another about the issues that they're facing. Some of these folks might work at their centers or volunteer at their centers, but some of them are, youth consumers who are having trouble at school or in their jobs, and they get the opportunity to provide that one or that small group peer support to each other. I think, yeah, I hit all of that. Okay, next slide, please. So the other hat I'm wearing today is as a board member for Disability Empower Network. So Disability Empower Network was founded at the beginning of the pandemic by a woman with a disability. Her name is Stephanie Woodward. She is a disability lawyer and has been in and around the disability community her whole life. And she believes extremely strongly, as do the rest of us involved with the organization, that when disabled women lead, we all succeed. So it is a nonprofit run by and for girls and women with disabilities that connects, motivates, and guides disabled girls and women to grow, learn, and develop to their highest potential and have the confidence to lead. We run a variety of programs, and we'll talk about a couple of them on the next slide. So what I would call our flagship program is Empower Camp. So the name Empower Camp is a little misleading. We start with a week of camping. We invite a group of 6 to 10 young leaders, which are disabled girls and young women ages 13 to 18, to a place called John Dillon Park in the Adirondack Mountains in New York State, which is a fully accessible wilderness campground. And we want these young leaders to have fun, explore, connect with one another, and learn about disaster preparedness, basic survival skills, leadership skills, and self-advocacy during this week. So During that week, the young leaders are connected with a mentor who is a woman over 18 with a disability. And together, the mentor and mentee pairs work on a year-long project, community action project, involving inclusive disaster strategies. So the mentor and mentee pairs meet at least monthly and work on these projects that are individualized to each young leader based on their interests. So we've had young leaders work on issues such as making domestic violence shelters accessible, talking about the preparedness of schools to help disabled students during active shooter crises. We've had folks we had one young leader create a comic book to educate organizations like the Red Cross on how to prepare their disaster shelters for people with disabilities. And these projects are designed by and created by these young leaders. So the project gives the mentor and mentee a chance to, build a great relationship while also helping their communities. At the end of the year, the young leaders and their mentors all meet up again in Washington, D.C. So they get to connect with one another again. They present their projects to the community members and leaders within the disability and disaster emergency work and community, and they get to go speak with their Congress people about disability and emergency disaster preparedness. So they also get to sightsee. We go out to dinner. It's a really, really great time. And then they have that bond, and we create this network of young people that can all connect with each other as the years go on. One of our very first programs was Letter from a Role Model. So we have created, again, that peer mentorship by pairing up young girls with disabilities with adults who have same or similar disabilities and experiences to one another, and they become pen pals. So I'm thinking about a young woman we work with named Kimmy, who is out of high school now, but when she started with Letter from a Role Model, she was a teenager in high school who was autistic and was really struggling with, accepting her autism and her experiences. And she connected with an autistic adult who taught her that her autism is a superpower. It's like the Force in Star Wars, and that it can have a light side and a dark side, but that you get to choose the light side and doing good in the world. And now she's a very proud young woman, and which I think started with that letter and that connection. And then lastly, I'll talk about Empower Her Expressions. This program is specifically for women with disabilities over the age of 18, and it is a career development program. So kind of similar to Lead On. We take a class of 10 women who meet with each other, learn from, and are mentored by other successful disabled women. They meet weekly with their mentors, and then also meet weekly as a group to have virtual classes. And they're working on achieving their career goals, working on how they can succeed in the working world, such as, learning how to give an elevator speech, creating presentations, interviewing, impromptu speaking, learning more about disability rights. So I've talked a long time, but I really appreciate your listening. And I'd be happy to share contact information if you want to speak with me about any of these programs. That's a great question. Angela asked in the chat, how is Empower Network funded? Primarily through donations and grants. We've received grants in the past from the Ford Foundation, from Mitsubishi Electric America Foundation, from recently, actually, we won, Stephanie Woodward, our executive director, won a L'Oreal Women of Worth award, which granted $25,000 to the organization. So if you are interested in ways of donating or getting involved with either organization, here is April. There's our website, and then let me see how fast I can type. There is not an Empower Him network, actually. So we get asked this question a lot. part of the reason why we've chosen to focus on women and girls is because we know that gender makes a huge difference in the outcomes and opportunities for people, that women, even non-disabled women, are often given less opportunity than their male peers. And so we really wanted to help close that gap. And this is how we are choosing to do that. I will say that programs like the Youth Leadership Forum that Sarah was talking about are really excellent opportunities for young men with disabilities. The April Lead On Collaborative is also open to folks of any gender. And there are lots of really cool programs out there, but not this specific one. But that doesn't mean somebody can't start it. I will put my email in the chat for folks as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Abby. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about our national programs. A lot of our youth in Florida have participated in April. We sent, I believe, 2 individuals who were also on the youth steering committee to the conference this year. First time they traveled on a plane away from their parents. It was a really unique opportunity. We've had a couple of youth here in Florida go through the Lead On Collaborative. And so these are just, again, I know we're talking about Florida, but I just wanted to also let you all know about the great things that are out there beyond the state of Florida, where when you've exhausted all your leadership opportunities here, which you never can, there are also things at a national level that you could be a part of. So thank you, Abby, for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you so much.
Next slide, and we're gonna bring it back down to Florida for the last few slides. So these are just, again, a couple more resources of other things to be involved in. I kind of grouped them together. So the Youth Leadership Forum, the Florida Independent Living Council Youth Committee, and then April are sort of all independent living. We all work in the same sphere. And then we have also the Family Cafe, and then we'll talk about their youth committee. So they're kind of, we all work together in partnership and network, which is great, but I know it can get confusing of, well, why are there so many different conferences and youth councils? It's wonderful that we have so many opportunities, and we all work together in partnership to, again, do the same thing, to build up the leaders of Florida and to help families and youth find their resources that they need. So the Family Cafe, I'm sure several of you are. I would love to see in the chat if you've participated in the Youth Leadership Forum, the Family Cafe. So what this is it's basically a 3-day conference, fully funded. Again, there are no registration fees, and there are scholarships available for families if they need them to stay in the hotel for the 3 days. And there's individual breakout sessions. There's an exhibit hall with thousands of vendors, keynote speakers, and then the governor also does his annual summit on disability every year and brings in some legislative leaders. So if you have not attended a Family Cafe, I highly recommend it. My family was able to find so many resources for my transition to college and employment. I learned there were sessions for youth specifically that were very beneficial. So there's a QR code that will link you directly there. And I see that Andrea said that the dates for next year are June 14th through 16th. Awesome. I've seen a lot of you have participated in the Family Cafe. 7 years. Wow, that's great. Awesome. Okay, next slide. So the Family Cafe, as part of one of their branch programs, also has a youth council. And you might be asking, well, what's the difference between the Florida Independent Living Youth Council and the Florida Youth Council? Ours is very specific around our state plan. So youth helping to give input for our state plan, to run those public forums, to really find the needs of youth with disabilities in Florida. And the Florida Youth Council does a lot of great things for conferences. They are able to also give trainings and do a lot of peer support and self-advocacy as well. But I think the biggest thing that differentiates us is that our youth committee is working on the state plan for independent living versus the youth council is more of just an outreach and self-advocacy type of council. But if anybody is on here from the youth council, please let me know, put it in the chat because you can probably speak to this better than I can. But emerging leaders that are involved with self-advocacy come together to, again, present sessions at the Family Cafe. They do a newsletter every month where their youth council is writing articles that their own committee has written. And they also host an annual youth summit, which again is geared just for youth with disabilities. And they run sort of like the April conference, an entire conference. In August in Orlando, that's just focused on youth sessions and building up that next generation. Next slide. Okay, moving right along. Partners in policymaking. This is a fantastic program. I actually have never participated in it personally, but as someone who sits on the Developmental Disabilities Council, who funds Partners in Policymaking, I get to see the great work that the partners do every year, and just am so impressed with the groups that they put together. This year, I believe they had over 100 applicants, and they can only take 25 people. So it's very competitive. And that just shows what a great job they do at outreaching and making sure that people know about it. But it's a leadership training program that teaches techniques for partnerships with elected officials, school personnel, or individuals who make policy decisions that impact the disability community. Oh, I see Andrea participated in Partners in Policymaking. Awesome. Okay. Andrea, do you want to just maybe unmute real quick and just share your brief experience? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, sure. So I participated in 2021, and it was still kind of in the midst of COVID. And so we were remote. I participated as a family with my child who has disabilities. And it was really helpful, so informative. It's 6 months, you commit to the one weekend per month, and you learn everything from basically the history of the, movement for the Disabilities Act, all the way to how you can participate at the local level, and you get trained on how to tell your story. You get assigned a group project based off of one of your interests, whether it's with health or transportation or education, and then you work together to create like a mock project that then you present to legislators. You invite people from the community and representatives to listen. And so it's a really great experience, a great hands-on practicing experience. And then as part of their program, they always invite the graduates to attend the Developmental Disabilities Day in Tallahassee. My year, there wasn't a Disabilities Day in Tallahassee because, again, it was like COVID and they weren't having people come. But the following year, they did invite us to go along with that class. So it was great. And I got to participate in that as well. I think it's a great opportunity. If anybody's ever interested in applying for it, you absolutely should.
Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, and I see Parker put in the chat, what is the age for this program? I know that I don't think there's a lot of youth. I believe
there were a few in my okay. class. I don't know though what the starting age is.
Right. Yeah, I would guess somewhere in the 15 to 16 age range. The only criteria for that is that if you are a self-advocate with a disability that applies for Partners in Policymaking, you have to have an intellectual or developmental disability to participate in that. So it's a little bit more siloed in terms of disability, whereas the other things we've talked about, you can have any disability to participate. Developmental Disabilities Council is just very much focused on individual and developmental disabilities. Linda said that Emily is a Partners in Policy grad too. And Debbie also said that their whole family went through Partners in Policymaking. So sounds like for the people that have done it, have loved it.
And I'll just add for the youth, it's not required for the parents to participate. They can participate individually.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. So I think for this program, you can be a parent, you could be a guardian, grandparent, or actually a provider that works for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as a self-advocate. So there's usually a very wide variety of individuals that are in each class. Okay, next slide. Oh, thank you. All of the classes are held in Orlando. Now that COVID is still very real, but now that we are mostly moving back to an in-person type format with all of our programs, Partners in Policymaking is held in Orlando. And again, all expenses are paid for the class to participate. So the contact, Stacy Hoagland, is wonderful. Her contact information is there, and I've also linked the QR code to go to the website directly. Next slide. And then under the branch of the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council as well is their self-advocacy network, also known as Florida SAND. And this is a statewide self-advocate-led group. And each part of the state has their own self-advocacy group that meets. I think that there's 19 of them in total, I believe. And it's led by self-advocates. So no parents are on here, no providers are on here. It is self-advocates doing self-advocacy. And they provide that united voice for any issues or topics that are important to people with disabilities in the state of Florida. And so they run their own, just officers, they have an advisor. And so again, it's all of that just empowered by themselves as advocates. Next slide. Okay, this map is also tiny, but you will have this as a resource. Again, just a map of the state of Florida showing the stars of all the different self-advocacy groups that are around the state of Florida. So you can see most of the major areas and even some of the rural areas do have a self-advocacy group. Next slide. So Florida SAND, there's some resources here of where to go. They do, again, newsletters, information that are written by self-advocates, those that have intellectual and developmental disabilities. They do also participate in Developmental Disability Day at the Capitol. So that's a big thing that they do. They have their own self-advocate conference every year. They also have a paid fellows program. So for those that are in leadership roles that have an intellectual or developmental disability, they can be paid as a fellow to then train other self-advocates, which I think is great. The fellows are also a part of a speakers bureau. So they do a lot of training to providers and other conferences in Florida here about different topics on disability. And they have a training course called The Route to Self-Determination. So the Florida SAND members themselves as self-advocates teach that course to teach other advocates about how to use self-determination, which we talked about in the beginning of our time. So all the resources are here. You can see their websites. If you go to the next slide, or the slide before had the QR code, but they have some Facebook groups that you can get involved with, and etc. Okay, that is all I have. We'll do some final tips at the end to wrap up and answer any questions. But before I do that, I just wanted to open the floor. I am by no means an expert to everything that is wonderful in Florida. So I would love to hear if I've missed anything or if other folks on the call have had other opportunities that they've participated in. I would love to just take a few minutes to briefly hear those opportunities. You can use the raise hand function if you have anything to share. Okay, don't see anybody yet. Angela, oh, sorry, Linda.
Sorry, I was trying to do two things at once and couldn't get to the raise hand button. I was waiting to see if anybody from the Mailman Center down in Miami might be on today. So they aren't. And so I will speak on behalf of them since I'm on their advisory council. But if you live in that Miami area, the greater Miami area, the Mailman Center and the LEND program that they have there actually has a whole pipeline or series of different opportunities for different ages of young people starting in high school. And so if you go and look them up, there's several different. One is a SALT program. The other one is SELP, SELP program. I can't remember what the acronym stand for anymore. Sorry. But anyway, it's a pipeline of leadership opportunities that is, that's very rich for that area. And, Sarah, you and I talked, I don't know for certain, but I would think that Special Olympics has some opportunities. And possibly some of our larger state organizations that are condition specific, the ARC, Down Syndrome Society or Down Syndrome Association. and possibly cystic fibrosis. So it would take looking into those, but I think that there's some other opportunities with those.
Thanks, Linda. I did see in the chat, Angela asked if any of the programs are offered in a language other than English, and I saw Abby did write about April. I will say the Youth Leadership Forum did have a Spanish-speaking delegate this year, and so we, as an accommodation, provided 2 Spanish interpreters for them to be able to have the entire program translated. So that was very beneficial, and we are willing to make that accommodation for anybody who needs it, at least to participate in the Youth Leadership Forum. So let's see if there's anything else in the chat. Okay, next slide. Oh, Parker, I see your hand. Go ahead.
For leadership opportunities, I was just gonna say, I don't know how well this applies, but if you're familiar with Serious Fun Camps, Camp Boggy Creek, they do a leader in training program for people with technically it's chronic illnesses, but a lot of disabilities also apply in there. So I know now they're extending their leader in training program to another year this year. So now I think you can be like 15, 16, 17 for leader in training, I think, or maybe I might be getting the years wrong, but it allows former campers to become basically mini counselors and become kind of leaders for other kids that are going through similar things that they are. And then later down the pipe, they can become counselors as well, which I think is it's something that I did personally, and it helped me become a better leader. So I think that's a great opportunity for people. You do have to be a previous camper to be a leader in training, but you do not have to be a previous camper to be a counselor, which I think is also a great a leader opportunity to just be a camp counselor there, because you gain a lot from that as well. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually have never gotten to participate in Camp Boggy Creek. I've wanted to. That was a dream of mine as a youth. So thank you for bringing that up. I always forget what a great resource Camp Boggy Creek is, and I'm jealous that I never got the opportunity to attend as a youth. So thank you for bringing that up. I know we've got a lot of good folks connected through the Florida Family Leader Network that have their children that have been a part of Camp Boggy Creek, including Angela's daughter. So also great point, Angela. She put that the Florida Family Leader Network is hoping to offer more opportunities for youth in the future. So stay tuned for that. I know that there's so many untapped things that are open for opportunity that we haven't even scratched the surface on. So now is a great time to be involved. But wanted to just wrap up briefly before I answer any last minute questions, again, of just some of the tips that I could give to a young person wanting to be involved. It's okay to start small. And I would recommend that you start small, because if you see every opportunity on the screen today and you want to jump in right away, you are going to be very overwhelmed. And there is a lot to be involved with. So it's important to understand your capacity and what you have to be able to commit. I am one of those people that loves to do 100 things, but if I can't give 100% of my energy to everything on my plate, then I have to know that it's okay to say no. So understand what your capacity is for commitment. It's also okay to be nervous. It's very daunting to come on to some of these leadership opportunities, or to go to the Youth Leadership Forum, or even the Family Cafe where there's thousands of people. It's normal to be nervous. And it's also okay to try different opportunities. And if you don't like it, you can try something new. There's so many things in the state of Florida and even nationally that if something is not for you, it is okay. You can tap into something else. Again, opportunities as a youth will lead into adulthood. So this networking that we've been talking about and peer support only opens doors for your future. And I cannot even tell you from personal experience how getting involved as a youth has led me as an adult into getting into these opportunities. And last but not least, you are a leader, regardless of your level of involvement. Just know that you have gifts and you have talents that you can use, whether it's on the youth council or it's on a national board, or even if it's just at one of your local school clubs. You are a leader no matter what your involvement looks like. So that is all I have for you. I know that it's almost 1 o'clock, so I don't know if we have time for comments or questions. But on the next slide, I do have my contact information with my email address. So please feel free to follow up with me if there's any resources that you need, or if you just have further questions or need me to help plug a youth in, I would be more than happy to do that. And I will turn it back over to Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you so